2024 board workshop to order.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And welcome, School Board of Directors. Thank you for all being here. I think that today's pretty exciting. I feel like having Marissa in the board meeting with us in this board workshop is almost like, I don't know, in the world of school boards, it's kind of like a celebrity sighting here. So it's kind of no, it's great. This is really cool. So, and I want to honor Miranda. Thank you for bringing this to our attention earlier, like basically last winter.
Yeah.
You two had a conversation and Miranda's like, we got to get Marissa here and we need to have a conversation about this. So all of that work has materialized into today. So thank you for being here. And I think that we're in for a great presentation and a lot of learning, and I'm just looking forward to it. So thank you. And Liz is going to get your PowerPoint queued up and ready to go. And she has informed me that there could be some interesting nuances that could happen throughout the presentation when we utilize links. So when the links happen, then she controls, and then we'll have to shift it back. So we'll play the game and it's going to be wonderful because she's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So yes, we can do this. Yes.
Zoom meeting, technology, we could do it all.
We sure can.
Are we waiting for Tucker or are we okay to?
Tucker will arrive when Tucker arrives. But we should probably just honor your time and thank you for being here. You've made the trip over and we don't want to lose any of the great information. So let's go ahead and get started.
And will you remind me, I'm vetted for 90 minutes, right? So I'm
Yep.
here until 2:30. Great.
Perfect. Yes.
Which feels like a long time, but hopefully it'll go fast. And I really want this to be interactive. So while I have a slide deck and materials I've brought, there's more information here than 90 minutes worth. And so I will go through the parts that seem like you need to learn more, and then I'll move through the parts that I might see you glossing over a little bit too. So I'll sort of gauge that as we go. Like Roy said, I'm Marissa Rathbone. I'm the Director of Strategic Advocacy for the Washington School Directors Association. I am just starting now my 6th year. So this will be my 6th General Assembly, which occurs this Friday and Saturday. And so I was telling, I think, Maria, when I was driving over, I had some coworkers who were like, why are you doing this week? Like, why are you driving over to Wenatchee the week of one of our largest events of the year? And quite frankly, because this is the good stuff, right? Being with all of you in your boardroom, in your district, in your community is the work that I most enjoy. So thank you for having me. It's actually an honor to be here. And hopefully it's just the start of a conversation. I hope to share some things that will be useful to you. And then perhaps this will spawn more conversation amongst all of you, and I'm available anytime. Zoom meetings, webinars, to come back over and visit, whatever you need. So with that, I'm just curious if we might just do a quick, I've met all of you, but I'm a little curious from your perspective, why you're on the school board. And then you might ask yourself that regularly too, but what brought you here? What's making you excited about that work today? And then also as it relates to advocacy, what are you hoping most to learn today? Is there like one thing that you really hope you're walking out of knowing that you don't know now? Miranda, I'll pick on you first.
So I'm Miranda, we've met, but my why is more of the community outreach and reaching with our community, with our just like community partnerships with our students and our families, building more resources together. When I had ran, it was more of a reminder of just more volunteerism, community outreach approaches. That was my big why. And this I think is more for me, be more of a refresher, like when being appointed January to join legislative committee, it is drinking out of a fire hose on top of learning that being a board director all in one capacity. Totally. So there's always something new to learn, or some of it can be a good refresher as most of us are starting another school year. So yeah,
nice. Anything specific you want to learn today? or?
No, I'm open for everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
That makes things real easy for me. All right, Maria.
Good afternoon. Let's try this again. Slowly. Thank you for being here, Marissa. Maria Iniguez. I've been on the board for, gosh, I don't know, 4 years? Yeah, I looked at Martin. Nearly 5. Yes, come January. Gosh, it doesn't feel like that long. My why is because representation is important. In a school district that's over 50% Latino, I feel that our board should reflect the students we serve. And my whole career has been in education and advocacy for our marginalized populations, which is I'm here to learn how to advocate for more resources. My big thing is the equity gap, including the achievement gap. So
Nice, thank you.
I'm Julie Norton. I'm currently serving as the president of the board. I've been on the board. I was appointed at the same time Maria was. When I first threw my name in to be appointed, it was kind of a time of instability. I felt like in the district as a whole, and my professional background being a municipal attorney, I understand government agencies and how they operate. And so a lot of the policymaking legislative things that occur on boards anyway. So I felt like it was a pretty natural fit. Plus, I also have 3 kids in the district. So I had a very, very real connection with the district and what I was hoping as a parent and the transparency and the things I wanted for my students and for all students. So I kind of just been hoping to do what I can to help use my background to help bring stability to the district and make improvements for all of our students. What I want to get out of this, because I do have a pretty solid legislative background, is really understand what we as a single board can do in this kind of big legislative world where it seems like so many things are out of our control, because it is, you know, a lot of it is done at the state level. So what can we as a small board do to help better our students, our community in that framework?
Nice, thank you.
Okay. I'm Martin Barron. This is my 5th year on the board, and I'm kind of here by accident. It's one of the best accidents that's ever happened to me. My second career was as a development economist. I hadn't done that for a very long time, but that is the skill that I think is most relevant to being on the school board, because education is development. I've lived in many, many places, Wenatchee for 35 years. I see myself as somewhat multicultural and recognizing variety and diversity and talent coming from all sides. Very much support Maria on that. And I also am kind of an internal person. I spent most of my career sort of in the chief of staff, main support to the CEO role. And so I like ideas, and I kind of work internally.
Thanks, Martin.
Tucker is on his way, so we'll have him here shortly. But again, thank you for being here. I am with Miranda. There is nothing that I could not learn today, so I'm very excited about that. And that was one of the reasons I think that as we were talking about this, it made so much sense. It's like, let's get as much as we possibly can, and then I'll be vulnerable here a little bit. One of the things that I am looking forward to is learning more about advocacy to, in fact, use it more. One of the things that I kept, it was, I won't say it was a missed opportunity last year, but it was a strategic 2nd year opportunity for me. So this is my 2nd year. Learning more about strategic advocacy is going to be very important, because I want to leverage that in the work that we do moving forward. But it was one of those things where that I was very particular. This is going to be a 2nd year thing. This is going to be a 2nd year thing. So I'm excited about learning how to utilize that. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And Tucker, thanks for being here. We're sharing with Marissa just who we are, our time on the board, and then what we may hope to get from here, and the why. I guess your why for being on the
Yeah, your
board.
why for
The question
on
you
the school board. and what you're hoping to learn from advocacy work today.
First off, sorry, I'm late. I had a gardening project turn into an irrigation project. And I was
That sounds
elbows
terrible.
deep in dirt. And I was like, wait a second, what time? Oh, no.
It's like a broken pipe, but okay.
So Julie, I apologize for it's nice to scooch over. Oh, okay. So what do I want from being on the board? Was that what? Why for being on? Thank you. I have 2 young kids in the district, and I have like a broad skill set that I thought works well in like a team environment, and I have an interest in education as like a pillar of a community. And I really wanted to take my skills and my enthusiasm for education and my kind of interest in problem solving and work with a group of people who wanted to do good things for the kids in the valley.
Cool. Anything
So-
that you hope to learn about advocacy today?
I would love to know how to be a better advocate. I look like I look, and I act like
You look like an advocate to
I
me.
will admit that I do not have a lot of experience being the person who need to be advocated for. So it's nice to be in a place where I can help be a better advocate.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about yourselves. Just helps for me to know who I'm here with in the room. I come from a line of public educators in my family, so a little bit about my why. I started my career as a public school teacher and gradually just found myself being asked to do more and different things as it relates to public education. I worked in the state of Texas, actually. I'm from Olympia, Washington, moved all around the country. I was in Austin, Texas for about 8 years and worked for their Department of Ed as their lead for health and physical education largely. And then I wanted to return home to be close to my family and friends. And found myself at OSPI, Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, in their learning and teaching division. So I've got an entire career all focused on public education, either in the classroom or supporting those who are in the classroom, or support those who support those who support those who are in the classroom, like here. And I believe strongly that public education is the core of our communities. It's the hub of our communities. It's not just a place of employment, but in some of our smaller communities, it is the place of employment. So everything from employing community members, families, and parents to providing opportunities for students to choose whatever they want to do next, whether that's work for their family farm in the communities where they grew up, or to head off to a college somewhere else in the country and pursue other endeavors. So I love supporting a system that helps meet people where they are, including school board members. And somehow I landed in advocacy work, I think because I did so much of it as an advocate for health and physical education, a content area, as I'm sure you're aware, often gets cut when cuts are to be made. And so I found myself advocating for a content area I cared passionately about, and realized in doing that work that a lot of people don't participate in advocacy or don't advocate because they believe they don't know how to do it and think it's a lot harder than it really is. So my good news to all of you is that even you, Tucker, can be a good advocate. It really takes very little qualifications except that you care deeply about something and you're willing to take action to make people understand why it's important. So the fact that you ran for office and you don't get paid for it leads me to believe that you're passionate about public education and the students and community members that you serve. So you are already a good advocate. You're doing a lot of that at your local community level. And those same skills and interests can be taken to the state and federal level too. I am going to share a couple tricks of the trade, some ways to navigate it from my perspective. Certainly not the only way to go about things, but perhaps it'll give you a little bit of a insight and also demystify it a little bit. Like I said, it's not difficult to navigate, but If you're not doing it every day like I am, it feels a little unwieldy. So my hope here is to expose you to some shortcuts perhaps. And then also just establish that I'm a resource for you as your advocate and help you navigate that in whatever way you want to. I might get up and move about, but I also like sitting down, so I'm with you. Before we get started, I did put some documents in front of you, which I hope we'll have a chance to dig into as we go. But just so you know what's in front of you, we're going to talk a little bit about the year-round advocacy cycle. That's the cycle document in front of you. There's also sort of a how-to, a one-pager on what it means to be a legislative representative. Who's the current leg rep on the board? That's you. Okay, great. Has it been someone else previously? Julie, Maria, did you serve in that capacity? Not yet. Could be one of you next, who knows? And then I also understand that Corey was hoping that we would talk a little bit, or at least for a portion of our time, about what it means to have student board reps, to establish that as a policy and bring them on. So hope that we are able to spend some time on that too. So here are some documents. We'll get into some of them more, but as you are thinking about what you want to dig deeper into, I'm happy to go into more detail on any of those. So real quick, before we dive in, if you wouldn't mind turning to the person beside you and saying what you think advocacy is. Simply, it can be a couple words, it can be a definition. What do you think advocacy is?
No.
Maybe 10 more seconds if someone didn't get a chance to share. Nice. Julie Tucker, what'd you come up with?
I think primarily our theme is that to be advocated, to give a voice, to be passionate about something, we give a voice to those who don't have it. And then we talk a little bit strategically to be an advocate, though you also have to be a very good listener to find out what makes your message more effective so that they can, a good advocate gets them to buy in and then you're, I guess, leading with more.
I'll start with to me, it's a two-way process. You don't just advocate for, you have to find the counter person and convince them that they want to assist you and make your advocacy happen. Or you.
Yeah, I went with more of a simplistic idea of taking something that you're passionate about and taking it to the next level, whether that's someone who's a decision maker or someone who can help you get to the decision maker. But that's the important piece.
Great. Sometimes you are the decision maker.
That's
That's the
true.
case may
Right.
here.
That's
There are
true.
lots of people trying to advocate to all of you as
Mhm.
well. So you're on the receiving end of it as well. Yeah.
We had, my plain answer is fighting for what you believe is right. And speaking to those that are in the decision-making seat.
Advocating for those that maybe are most vulnerable and not just, and then moving forward to how are we going to provide that equity component for them to making sure that they're represented and we can help them along the way.
Nice. Thank you, Miranda. I'm navigating this microphone. Liz, if I put it here, am I going to break it or? Okay. Break the microphone system. Excellent. So all of you are right? I heard representation. I heard listening. I heard sort of reciprocity, both you're advocating for, but you're also hearing back. one word that won't surprise you that's critically important to be a good advocate is relational. That no change occurs in a vacuum. And if you are trying to move the needle on any policy issue with someone who has, for lack of a better term, influence or power, and you don't already have an established relationship with them, you won't be able to move the needle without it. And so much of being an advocate is initiating and sustaining and maintaining relationships with other people who make decisions. And thinking about it from the perspective of when you see advocates in your community come to you and want you to make a decision on their behalf, what skills are they bringing to you that influence you to make a decision? So those are all transferable skills. So let's build upon that. Something just to note, we get a lot during the course of the 365 days, I would say people, not just school board members, but people are paying the most attention to state level advocacy during the either 105 days of a long session or the 60 days of a short session. Because that's when that's when there's media attention to it. That's when legislators are at the Capitol. That's when actual decisions are being made. But I will tell you, in terms of importance, the most important time to be doing any kind of advocacy work is when there isn't a legislative session going on. So that's right now. It's the time between legislative session. It's the time when legislators are meeting with their constituents and finding out what's important to their constituents. And they're actually even writing bill drafts or proposed policy papers on what they're planning to do in the next legislative session. So it is happening right now that 2025 legislative session bills are being written, either philosophically or actual text. It gives time for legislators and you to actually pause and reflect. The problem about bringing any kind of new ideas or big ideas or facts, for that matter, during a legislative session is that things are moving so quickly. There is not a lot of time to move off course. It's really like we're going to move this forward or we're going to kill it time. Right now is the time where new ideas and generating proposals is your most impactful. It's also an opportunity for you to gauge what's important to your community members. So again, there's not a lot of time during the legislative session for you to be doing that. Right now is the time. Whereas during the session, just general facts is that in Washington State, the Washington State Legislature always starts the second Monday of the year. Next year, because it's an odd numbered year, 2025, it'll be 105 days long at least. I always have to have that caveat. It's like that's the established days is 105 days in a long session and 60 days in a short session. The odd numbered years, some might say are the most important of the biennium. So you've really got a 2-year cycle where the legislative session starts with the odd numbered year in the long session. That's when there are most likely to be shifts in leadership in terms of committee leadership, people moving committees. But most importantly, it's when the biennial budget is set. That doesn't mean they don't make small tweaks or add or subtract during even numbered years when it's a short session. But by and large, what they're looking at is the revenue forecast really for the next 4 years. And that 2-year biennium right in front of them helps them to establish where they're going to add money to. And in some cases where they're going to take money away. That's a lot harder to do, especially when it's paramount duty. So we call those the even numbered years supplemental because they're adding to the established policy priorities. And during session, like I said before, is when communication to legislators have to be real concise. Just thinking about that, the majority of legislators, so we've got 147 of them. You've got 49 legislative districts in the state of Washington, 2 representatives in each, and 1 senator in each for a total of 147. They are usually on at least 3 committees. Sometimes they're on 4, but that means that they're dealing, if they're on education, they might also be on healthcare and they might also be on transportation and then also rules. We'll talk about that in a minute. So they are hearing from constituents who care about all those issues And in many cases, they are not expert at that particular area. So again, just thinking about yourself as a resource to them, that they need you to understand what's going on in public education and to be their educator of education, because they're grappling with so many other competing issue areas. In our world, we think public education is all that there is to attend to. And yes, it is the paramount duty, but without the healthcare system, transportation and roads, public safety, public education doesn't get to exist at all, right? So we need all these other sectors to support public education, and they are dealing with that all at the same time. And the advocates for the other content areas are just as passionate as we are. So just something to keep in mind. So if you pull out this year-round advocacy cycle, I'm going to dig into these sections a little bit more, but the visual that I'm really hoping to land with all of you, and I might say this ad nauseum, is that session is important, and I'm going to talk with you about ways that you can be involved during session, but I really want to compel you to be at least as, if not more, active in the advocacy work that you care about during the time of the year where there's less attention to it. And you have to somewhat drive that because there isn't as much media attention. You're not getting interviewed about your policy considerations for a particular bill that's on the table. So it's less of a sense of urgency right now, but it is absolutely the most critical time. So I'm gonna go through each of these little slivers of the advocacy pie, the year-round advocacy pie, and we can dig into it a little bit more. I'd be curious, as you think about these lists, what are you already participating in or know about? And if there's anything you want me to dig into more, I would invite you to interrupt me before I move on to the next slide. So like I was just talking about, the legislative session either lasts January to March in a short session or January to April in a long session. Again, that's really not that much time when you think about that in the course of the year. It's a pretty small sliver of the whole calendar year. But during that time, your messages to legislators and their staff should be short and concise about particular bills. And I would recommend using a variety of ways to communicate with them. Your best way, the best possible way to communicate with a legislator during a legislative session is if you have their cell phone and you can text them. Remembering that all of this is public records, but how you would use that to your advantage is their inbox is overflowing and they probably aren't even checking it, to be honest. They've got staff who are doing that. They've got voicemail messages on their legislative landline phone. They actually still do have those that are also piling up, and their staff are filtering through those. If you have a direct line of communication with them and you can say, I need to talk to you about House Bill 2148. Do you have 5 minutes? And you already have an established relationship with them, that's your way directly to them to have an influence before they take a vote. So you might say, well, I don't even know who our legislator is going to be in this next round. That's true. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And that is true. That's why the interim is so important, that you build that relationship and hopefully get to a place, maybe not by 2025, maybe you're already there, but at some point that you have direct access to a legislator on their personal cell phone or their legislative cell phone. That's going to be your quickest way. Other than that, ways to get their attention. Yes, send an email. It is a public record. And so if it's well-written, concise, to the point, and their staffer is paying attention to it and wants to bring it to them, they will. You can further get their attention by providing testimony actually during the legislative session. So if you are showing up either virtually, which you always have access to do, you don't have to come to Olympia to provide testimony, but it certainly benefits you at least once to come over and hang out in the hallway and wait for them to come out and make sure you shake their hand and let them know that you're there. But if you're having a hard time capturing their attention in one of these more sort of static communication systems, getting in front of them by providing testimony in their committee and following up with them, even just there in person, goes a long way to making sure they're seeing you. I would also recommend that during this time, during your actual board meetings, that you have a ledge rep report at each board meeting. I'd actually recommend that you extend that throughout the year on some regular schedule. Maybe not at every board meeting. Do you meet 2 times a month generally? So maybe at your first or second board meeting per month, you have a ledge rep update. Sorry, Miranda. Or whomever it is next. And what I recommend during ledge session, that the ledge rep report can very simply be communication about what I'm sharing out at the end of every week during the ledge session. I send out what I call in session, which gives a high level summary of what happened that past week and what's going to happen the next week. So the ledge rep can help curate some of that information every 2 weeks during your board meeting and say, based on what I know about the conversations we've had or we're having, here are some of the things that are happening right now during the legislative session I think we should be paying attention to. So you don't have to create, anybody else, you don't have to create content on your own. We're really working to provide that for you. And then that you're taking kind of that high level overview, and that's generating conversations in this boardroom based on that overview. If you really like detail and deep dives of information, I would recommend the WASA weekly overview. Dan Steele is my counterpoint over at the Superintendent's Association, and he is very good at words and a lot of them. And so it made my job really easy that he's got all the detail covered, and a lot of people like that. I also know that a lot of people have limited time. So I'm taking the high level overview. Here are the high level things you should be paying attention to. Dan's doing the deep dive on the details. So you've got options from both. You may see an overview of a bill on in session from me. Want to know a little bit more? You are welcome to come to me and I can provide that to you. But if you don't want to make a phone call, you can also go to the weekly WASA report, which Courtney will have access to. So also during ledge session, there will be a weekly ledge rep network meeting. We hold that at noon on Thursdays. Any of you can attend. You don't have to be a ledge rep to be there, but that is a little bit more of a dynamic version of the in-session report every week. I usually have guest speakers, legislators, folks from our education partners, so maybe someone from WEA or OSPI who's providing more detail there in a live setting where you can ask questions live. I'll talk a little bit more about the ledge rep network outside of session, but we do intensify our communication about advocacy during session because there's a lot more happening more quickly and a lot to keep track of. And then I would also just remind you that WASDA, you school board members, every year come to the General Assembly, which is happening this Friday and Saturday, to adopt and affirm your WASDA platform, which includes right now 225 permanent and legislative positions that membership over the course of time have adopted that communicate what you believe in terms of what are your values as a school board organization and what legislative action do you want WASDA to be taking on your behalf. And that platform lays out what your perspectives are on a variety of issues. And we can dig into some of those more if you like, but I would recommend that you're revisiting that platform regularly so that you don't find yourself at this time of year like, oh, what do we want to vote for or against at General Assembly? You already have some sort of sense of what's already present in the platform and where you want to see it move. So that's a lot to do from January to April. I know you got a lot of other things that are going on. So this is a menu of options. Any questions or considerations about any of these things? Okay. I'm going to move to March or April. Let's assume legislative session is over. Woo! We're excited. It's over and we got everything we asked for. That's probably not going to happen. But maybe we got some of what we asked for, and that's pretty darn good when we're walking away from legislative session. Regardless of what we didn't get, we're probably going to get at least some more money And there's gonna be a lot of things that they don't do. That's even better news, because while we talk a lot about the bills that pass or the budgets that move forward, there are a lot of bills on the table that never pass. And that's some of our best news ever. Even good policy that doesn't pass, it's oftentimes because it was under or not funded. And we spend a lot of time, myself and the other advocates on your behalf, quite frankly, killing bills that are either not in alignment with your policy or just quite frankly can't be done because they aren't adequately funded. They're not adequately resourced to do well. One of my primary talking points to legislators is if you care so much about this policy idea and you want it to be done because you care about the students and families and the communities where you have been elected, then you will ensure that it is adequately resourced. Otherwise, it just cannot be implemented. And I think some of our work from March until December is helping our legislators understand what it actually means to implement a policy. I think there's a lot of lots of things, as you know, look good on paper, but taking a new policy idea and actually all the people at the district level who need to be involved and considering how that's implemented, right down to the student experience, takes a lot of work. And we are the ones responsible for reminding them what kind of work that takes. And that's, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that is collectively our responsibility. Before we get there, though, we thank them for what they've provided. As you know, when you hear from your own community members, they get a lot more from giving a little honey before the salt, right? So if they're going to ask for something or express their concern about something, it sure would be nice to also be affirmed that you've done some things well and that they appreciate your work in that regard. Like you, our legislators are elected officials and volunteers. So try to find the nugget in there, and if you need help, I can help you out. Also during the spring position window, advocacy at the school board level for WASDA is submitting position proposals. And those position proposals would be suggested retirements or consolidations of those 225 I already mentioned, or making sure that the 225 that are already adopted are better written or better reflect Wenatchee and your region's interests. That spring position window occurs every March and April from WASDA, and it's a way for you to keep this conversation that matters to you going with school directors across the state throughout the rest of the year. This is also the best time, including in the fall, actually spring and fall, when they're not in session, to invite your legislators to visit your schools. Have you done any of that yet? It's okay if you haven't. Do any of you have experience actually having legislators into your campuses? Yes, you do. Good. And how did it go? What was it like? And okay. So you've extended some invitations and they haven't necessarily shown up.
Yeah.
Okay.
They toured the high school last year. We were working on some of our deferred maintenance work and some of our HVAC systems. They actually
Great.
were, thank you for popping that on. Liz is like, I got him. Thank you. Someone needs to have me. So they toured our facilities. We got them up on the roof and talked about what HVAC compressors look like at Wenatchee High School and had a good conversation there.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. And
Yes,
that's
I have to go back.
That's particularly important because Mike Steele is on the capital budget committee,
Yes.
ranking minority member, has a lot of influence within that.
The other conversation, I just remind, thank you, that was a reminder. We brought them into a conversation. If I can find the right words, we were working through some grant funding that we got for technology with regard to ESSER funds. And there was a lot of, we had a finding, and so we were fined some dollars because of that, as were many folks in
Yes.
Washington State.
Absolutely.
And so they sat down and had a conversation with us around that too. In fact, we instigated one of the conversations, and then Representative Steele, he was the one that was the catalyst for the other conversation. Hey, what's going on with Wenatchee with regard to this conversation? So those were also really good conversations. Yeah, that's all last year.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we forget what we did.
Yes.
But Mike won't forget that, right? Because you invited him in, he saw the schools, he'll remember what Wenatchee looks like. And when he had a question, he reached out to you to ask for more. So there's a huge value in bringing them into your communities. To any degree, you can have students engage with them while they're actually on the campus. I've heard of some school districts actually, when they have legislators in, some of the student leadership actually does the tour themselves. If you had student board reps, they could serve in that capacity. And then that really leaves a mark with legislators, just like it would for you when you go into your buildings as well. Is that interaction with students and teachers that reminds you about the humanity of what you do. And then when they have a follow-up question, really about anything in K-12, but particularly about the policy issues you expose them to. So what do you want them to ask you about? Helps remind them that you're a go-to about those topics in the future. So really, really good reminder. And then once session is over, we start having monthly Ledge Rep Network meetings. Miranda has attended, and any of you are welcome. So it is tailored to Ledge Reps as sort of a community of practice where they learn together, but also share ideas. But any school board members, superintendents are welcome to attend as learners as well. It's not an exclusive club. I just know you got a lot of other things on your plate. Continuing with thank yous, continuing to invite them. It's a great time to have them to your graduation celebrations, as well as summer programs. Many of our school districts are offering summer programs and need additional supports there. So don't forget, just with the end of the school year, there's still opportunities to help our legislators understand what's going on. And when I say legislators and inviting them to campus, this is an opportunity to invite your members of Congress as well. So I tend to focus a lot more on state legislators because that's where we have a little bit more immediate impact. And in both state and federal right now, there's just a lot of swirl. So, but if it's good to invite state legislators, also good to invite members of Congress. Maybe at the same time, maybe not. We would talk about that individually to find out what their relationships are, to see if that would serve you well, or if it's better to keep it separate. Legislative assistants are so important to know. We actually have a list, and we will have to obviously update this because I don't know if you knew this, there's an election this year. And we will have a host of new legislators or legislators who have changed, although their email addresses probably will remain the same. But very likely their legislative assistants, basically their immediate support staff. There's a lot of turnover in that role because quite frankly, it's not a highly paying job. So oftentimes it's younger people who take on that responsibility and they end up getting hired in other roles, promoted to other roles. So sometimes those folks don't stay for very long. So they change out, but they are so important for you to also build a relationship with. Take a little candy or a cookie to when you're visiting the Capitol, because they're the ones who are most likely screening the inbox and also establishing meetings and calendars. So legislators are important to have relationships with, but legislative assistants sometimes can be the gatekeepers to those legislators. And if for any reason you need help accessing them, we keep an updated list. Continuing to attend meetings. Let's see, so about this time of year, you're preparing for General Assembly. You can still be meeting with legislators, although I understand right now is a little bit of a challenge just given campaign focus, although it is a good time to get their attention because they're also trying to win a campaign. Even though you might not know the probable winner, especially in LD12, where you reside, but helpful to meet with both candidates who are at the top of the ticket, just so that they get to know you too. If they don't win this election cycle, they might run again in something else. So it's good to have friends in all kinds of places. I understand that Miranda will be representing you at General Assembly this week. We have 128 voting delegates registered. right now, which is almost matched as our record from last year, which is great. We do have 295 school districts though, so until we get to that level, I won't be satisfied, and hope more districts come together to participate in this work. But it sounds like you're already on top of it. At the start to the school year, you have the opportunity to continue to build those relationships with your legislators. The opportunity to prioritize the legislative positions after General Assembly is work that informs WASDA's priority document. I did not bring that from last year, but I have a reflection of it on the deck. They will likely be similar than they were in past years. So your priorities last year were special education, transportation, school meals, capital school facilities, and special education. You may have heard of the big three. Have you heard of the big three? No, it's okay if you haven't. I imagine Corey has. So the big three are the three legislative priorities of WASA right now, as well as several other of the administrative organizations. Because they're not a state agency, and they don't have quite the same deliberate process that WASDA has in adopting our priorities platform. They're able to adopt a lot more quickly than we are, but their priorities already established are special education, transportation, and MSOC. That's right. So I would be surprised if we didn't have all of those three pretty close to the top of our priority list. But again, we need all of the school boards to participate in that process. So if you haven't had that conversation yet, it will immediately follow General Assembly, and it will basically be curated into a final document from WASDA. And then we use that to advocate on the membership's behalf with legislators. Annual conference is coming up. Do y'all know if you'll be attending this year? Because it'll be in Spokane. Great. Have you attended before? Okay, so you're old hat at that. It's one of my favorite. It is my favorite WASDA event because it just feels so celebratory. It's at the end of the year. We've made it through a lot of stuff by then. You know, it'll be right after the national election. So, I mean, it will be both a relief and there will be tension this year. But hopefully, as is every year, we'll be able to stay focused on student outcomes because we've got some great sessions that are focused on that. And then, of course, immediately following the election, when you absolutely know who your representatives and senator are, congratulations, so glad you're on board, an offering to meet with them, either going to them in district or inviting them out here to see your schools if they haven't done that already this year, would be in a good step for preparing for the next legislative session. So I would say in terms of prioritizing for November, be thinking about who here is responsible for reaching out to the winners of the LD12 election and how you all want to congratulate them and communicate with them about your district priorities, how you might have an opportunity to meet with them face to face. Face to face is always better, as you know, just helps to build relationship. But if you can't get them face to face, a Zoom meeting or a phone call can work too. I would say whatever you can get, but start with a face to face. Invite them here if they want or go to them. And then do all of that over again. So the good news and the bad news of advocacy is that it's never ending. Because one, we rarely get everything that we want from a legislative session. So there's always a need to keep communicating the message. Two, relationships aren't static, right? So once you establish one, you need to keep working on it and build it, especially because you don't want legislators to just think you like them because they're voting for things you care about during a legislative session. You really want to have a relationship with them, and that's communicated by staying in touch with them year round. And three, people change in their positions. Legislators change, legislative staff changes. So there's always this need to continue the conversation on repeat. So a little bit about sort of timing and what to be doing at what times during the year. Anything from your perspective that I missed that has been important to you or that you were hoping I was going to talk more about as it relates to specific steps during that advocacy cycle?
I think it's just sending that reminder. I think most of us have gotten the email. There are election positions open right now
Mm-hmm.
until October.
Nope, they closed today. The
They-
the elections closed today. Mm-hmm. Yep. Either at 3 or 5. Do we need to take a pause? No. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, there are elected seats with WASDA in a variety of different positions, Ledge Committee, Resolutions Committee on the WASDA board. So elections are made during this window, September 1st through the 16th, and then the elections actually occur October 1 through the 16th. So hopefully you'll participate in voting. Are you coming back to Ledge Committee?
I filed, yes.
Nice, great. Then you have to be elected. So I don't know if it's contested or not. We'll keep you posted. Okay, nice, great. So a little bit more about ways to reach your legislators. There's just no wrong way, really, like in terms of use the thing that works for you in terms of how you build relationships, right? But again, be persistent and consistent, be kind and compassionate, inviting them to come here, you being willing to go to them and recognizing that you might not be taking the full board because that creates a board meeting. Are there 2 of you who are able to go out and meet with Mike Steele in Lake Chelan? What a nice little day trip, you know? Have a nice lunch on the way, you know, he's delightful. I've driven out there to meet with him myself. So, and I've met with, Keith Gaynor, in Kashmir. So, you know, it's just a nice opportunity to sit down, have a cup of coffee, break bread, whatever it is that they enjoy to do. Less influential, but maybe if you're having a hard time capturing their attention, going to places where they're already planning to be. So all legislators host town halls. Right now they're hosting campaign events. To whatever degree you agree that that's a good use of your time and appropriate, go to where they are if you haven't had a chance to get them to where you are. Because any sort of exposure for you to shake their hand and then follow up to say, hey, I met you at your town hall last week. I wanted to follow up on that question that you asked me or that conversation that we had. Tea, coffee, informal, ask questions, no agenda for your first meeting. And then periodically throughout, right? Again, you can apply your own experience to the experience you're creating for legislators. You don't want to meet with your constituents all the time and have them asking you to do something, right? Like to be cared for as a human being and just have a general relationship is built outside of an agenda. So to whatever degree you can schedule multiple times to connect with them. And that some of those times there's no agenda. You're just here to learn what's going on with them. What are they hearing? What do they care about? Gives you an opportunity to respond at your next meeting. I'm gonna move through some of this content more quickly, just because I want to be sure that we get to some of the student rep conversation, but wanted to be sure you knew that there are some tips about setting up meetings. If you ever have trouble finding a way to connect with your legislators, please let me know. I'm happy to even do an introduction, right? Like if you are having a hard time getting them to follow up, or maybe you haven't been able to get them live, I am happy to follow up with you or on your behalf as well. So it's something I'll just put on the table, or help you walk through what a successful invitation or meeting looks like. Lots of different things to prepare. I'm going to talk a little bit about ways that you can prepare on your own, so that you're as relevant as possible when you're going in there. Just one thing to note that different legislators, right now, the legislature has communicated that they don't keep paper records of anything. So there used to be this practice of bringing your 1-page priority document to them. Some of them have told us, oh, I'm sorry, I can't keep that because of public records retention. So the nice thing about technology is you can use it as a talking point. If you're meeting with them, you can hand it over to them. And if they are unable to keep it, or even if they keep it, they might throw it away afterwards, follow up with an email with it as an attachment. Just to make sure that they have a record, because they might not think they need it right now, but they'll be like, ooh, I met with someone from the Wenatchee School Board and something about MSOC was really important to them. I don't remember what it was. They can search for it in their saved folders or maybe even their deleted folders. always follow up with an email to thank them. So again, this is just like common relationship practices, making sure that you're staying connected to them. Do's and don'ts. I've said some of this already. Prioritize a relationship with them, go to them, invite them to your schools, say thank you, ask them about their interests, maybe go in with that first. That tells you a lot too, because they may share something about what they care about, graduation pathways, CTE programs. That's a way to know that when you invite them to your schools, you're going to get them in the door by inviting them to the thing they care about, but you're also going to walk down the hall and show them the thing that you care about. So again, that's the asking them questions, finding out what matters to them, and using that to help build a bridge. We're going to talk about this, know which committees they sit on and bills that they've sponsored. There are actually places on the legislative website that you can do that hunt on your own. I also can do it for you. I realize you've got a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes it feels tedious to go through WASDA website, the legislative website. But if you are kind of nerdy about this stuff and just want to know, I'm happy to point you in that direction. Be prepared with some stories and some data to support it. And if you don't know the answer to a question, you know this. Say you'll get the information for them and follow up with some facts. Don't point out their deficits or their policy failures as a first step. Express gratitude first. They may not, don't assume that they know the acronym that you're using or the policy issue. Maybe they lived in the district for a while. Maybe they even have kids in the public education system, but education is complex, as you know, you're in it, and there are ever-changing programs and practices around, world languages, CTE programs, math curriculum adoption. Things are ever-changing. So if you're bringing up a topic that's really important to you, have some background information ready to share with them and say, is there any more you'd like to know, or would you like for me to follow up with some additional information? Don't assume that they know what you're talking about. Like I said, try not to use acronyms or education policy jargon. Maybe this is a little self-reflective. I need to be sure to attend to that. Maybe you don't have as much trouble with using jargon, but just note that we are in a space where we use language that not normal people don't talk about some of the things we talk about all the time. Lucky them. And don't assume they're going to do what you ask every time. So you're going to get some fails. And in fact, you're going to ask them to vote a certain way. You're going to ask them to change a bill a certain way, or you're going to ask them to prioritize an issue a certain way. And they may not do any of those things in a single legislative year. That is not reason to give up hope. Again, there are thousands of bills filed every single session. They've got a lot coming at them. So a lot of this work means that you're consistent and persistent. And it may be 2 years down the road before they introduce a bill about an issue that you care about. But the reason it occurred at all is because you started the conversation now. And then, of course, don't forget to follow up. I mean, really follow up anyway. It's another excuse to make a connection, but certainly if you say you're going to it. So based on your head nods, I got a sense that you're tracking this already. This is pretty much out of date, even though it's real for right now. It's not going to be real for 2025 with your legislative district changes. And you probably, I'd be curious your perspective. My understanding is Mike Steele's the probable candidate coming back to the House. Keith Gaynor is the probable senator representing LD 12 moving over. And I'm not sure about the other seat. And then nothing's a sure thing until votes are counted, and sometimes counted again. So what I do understand from people who know even more about this than I do is that it is probable that that your legislative district will be predominantly or entirely ours, as they are now and as has been for a while. And you'll likely have 2 of the 3 that you've had for a while. So there will be a fresh relationship to build. The future Senator Gaynor, if that's the way it lands, will have some things he'll need to figure out and navigate as he switches from the House to the Senate. But at a minimum, I would be saying that that these two individuals are people who, if you don't have consistent communication or conversation with, you could do it after this meeting. You reach out to them and just say, we learned some things and we're reminded we should have coffee. You got Keith, right next door, and Mike's a little bit of a drive, but either way. And then you've got a host of folks who are running for that other House seat, and you should meet with the top two candidates now. You don't have to wait until the election. So once the election is over, I just wanted to call out that, especially for, well, with Gainer moving, and then you'll have an open seat, you won't know yet who's on what committee, probably until the legislative session starts officially. Rumors will start to circulate, but it is really important to know which legislators sit on which committees. So your legislators will sit on particular committees. Some of those will be relevant to education and budget. Some of them won't. If they're on committees that aren't necessarily relevant to education, but relevant to other things that you care about, that's another way to build a bridge to them. But at a minimum, paying attention to, on the House side, these 4 committees, critically important, obviously education. Appropriations is the general operating budget. Capital budget is for building, school construction, and rules is basically the gatekeeper for all bills to go to the House floor. So it is important because this is where many bills go to die, whether you want them to or not. And so if you have a legislator in the Rules Committee, you see a bill that has basically stagnated, but you want to see it continue, you've got somebody in here, they can help loosen up the block, actually, and help to pull things. Every legislator on Rules Committee gets to pick like their favorite 2 bills of the day or whatever, and then those bills actually have a better chance of moving to the floor for a full vote. Otherwise, they might die there, and you might want that too. So it might be good not to bring it up. So there are going to be more legislators, obviously, who are outside your district, who are influential and important. So working with some of your other school board members to be sure they're doing what you're being asked to do today, so that collectively you've got representation on all these committees is really important. I didn't pull all of your legislative profiles again because it's not moot in this moment, but it will shift around soon. And committees, like I said, aren't officially established until the beginning of a legislative session, especially since it's the start to a new biennium. But Representative Steele has been on these committees for quite a while now. So I am not familiar with him changing, but that doesn't mean he won't. He is considered a very strong leader. A lot of people, ours and D's, really like him. So if he wanted to move to another committee, he might be able to do that. I don't have a sense that he wants to. You might. But he is a little bit of a unicorn situation here, because you've actually got one of your legislators is on 3 committees that are all important to what we do. So I'm not saying one legislator is more important than another legislator, but I am saying that knowing which committees they're on and where they have particular influence is important. And Mike has a trifecta here. We'll just have to keep an eye. I have heard that Keith Gainer gets the Senate seat, might stay on Education Committee because he is on Education as a representative, might just stay there. But again, all those things are to be worked out behind doors that we will most likely never be in, okay? Unless you really want to, and by all means, good for you. On the Senate side, the committee structure is a little bit different. So there is no appropriations and capital budget. They've combined early learning and K-12 into one committee. Ways and Means is basically the general and the capital budget combined, although they have a subcommittee. Ways and Means is something we're really keeping a close eye on for next session, because we really lost a very important chair for capital school construction. Mark Mullet ran for governor, as you know, didn't make it to the primaries, and was a huge proponent for school construction and actually understood it in a way that a lot of legislators don't, because it is so complex, as you know. Anyway, so my understanding is using her name right now, who's the likely. Jasmine Trudeau is the likely successor. What I understand is that she's a fan and a supporter of public education, but knows very little about capital school construction. So it'll give us over there on the other side an opportunity to train her up. And then you've got rules on both sides. So there's a lot of detail in all of this committee structure that you may or may not care about, but it is important to know because that's the first stop for any bill is in the committees. Then they have to move to the budget, then they have to move to rules before they ever make it to the. Okay, I'm gonna, again, skim through this because I want to sit down and talk with you a little bit about student board reps. But there are some links, so depending on what you want to know about student representatives, we can dig into some resources. But again, in addition to that, I would just encourage you to explore the WASDA website. If you're looking to learn more about ledge reps, we got a standalone page for that, including some videos. We're really trying as an organization to provide you with education information that's dynamic and comprehensive. Sometimes those two don't go together. Dynamic is a 2-minute video that you can get a high level baseline of education information. And then comprehensive is a more thorough document that may require a little more attention. So we try to do both for every given topic. Also, if you haven't subscribed to our daily e-clippings, it's an important way just to stay tuned to some of the conversations going on. You have this one pager in front of you. Lots of good information about the role of the legislative representative, but you may already know this, but that is undefined. That is really, we have a model policy that you can basically take and make your own. And you can define the terms, the expectations for your ledge rep to whatever degree this group decides it's appropriate or necessary. So nothing is codified about having a ledge rep to begin with or what the ledge rep role is, but certainly my aim or ambition is that they are the conduit between WASDA and your board to help keep you informed about what's going on top of all of their additional responsibilities as a board member. So it's a big lift. I walked you through some of the resources that we developed during session. There are quite a few, again, at varying levels, depending on what you're interested in. You're always welcome to email me, us. I say I'm a team, but I'm a team of one inside of WASDA. And then we also have a consultant, Mike Hoover, who is basically a registered lobbyist and works very closely with the legislature on behalf of WASDA and several other clients, has a long history with the Washington State Legislature, including as their head counsel on both the Senate and the House Republican sides. How do you find documents? Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I'm happy to dig in to whatever degree you feel you want more information. But this is a clip of the front page of the Washington State Legislature online. So if you're during session and you want to find a bill, you have to know the bill number. That might be the stopping point right there. So that's where you text or call me to find out. And that takes you to where the bill is at the various points in session. There's a lot of other really great information that is available to you. Just you can find your representatives, find your districts, laws and agency rules, agenda. But again, we try to digest all of this so that it's a little bit easier to find on the website. Mentioned this, these are all hyperlinks. So if in our time together you want me to dig into any of this, it's available. We've had a bunch of pre-learning, one more tomorrow leading up to General Assembly. It's all posted, recorded and posted on our website. Annual conference, as I mentioned, is the 21st through the 23rd. There will be a Strategic Advocacy Academy, a pre-conference. And I'll also have a couple sessions actually at annual conference where we'll dig into more relevant information going into the session. We'll know a lot more by then about what to expect or look for. And then a couple changes in terms of WASDA, just to take note. In the past, WASDA has worked with WASA and WASBO to bring to you our annual legislative conference, which over years has been held at SPSCC in Olympia. Has anybody attended that? Yes, Miranda. Okay. We received a lot of feedback, let's call it, that the venue was undesirable. It was basically it was a college auditorium, a lecture hall, essentially. Didn't create a space where there was much networking opportunity. So, and we also heard like, why are we waiting until 6 weeks after the legislative session to talk about these things? So as such, we've shifted our dates to occur the weekend immediately preceding the start of the legislative session. So we will work with our partner organizations to establish our shared priorities. I imagine they will be in the vein of MSOC, special education, transportation. Might try to throw in some capital school construction there too. Again, that will depend largely on how WASDA prioritizes its positions, but we'll figure that out as we get closer. We'll talk about all the strategy to help elevate those shared priorities before the session starts on January 13th. That goes 105 days. We have lots of things to navigate with this new session. Not only do we have new legislators, we'll have new bills and a new budget. We'll have a new governor. We'll have a new trust lands commissioner or the Department of National Resource Commissioner, a new attorney general. I mean, so many new things to navigate in the state of Washington and nationally that will have an impact over the conversations that we'll be having. But what doesn't change is that education is still in our Constitution as the paramount duty. So they know they got to show us some money, at least a consistent amount. And the probable outcome is that the Democrats will hold the majority still in the House and Senate. As has been true for a while. So I'm going to pause, field some questions, if you have any, and then talk a little bit about student board reps. Anything you were hoping to know about, Ab? Are you feeling overwhelmed? That was a lot. Any key takeaways? You're like, ooh, I want to know more about that, or I really want to do that now.
I would say the importance of actually interacting with your representatives. You know, like this is not a closed system of our school district, that we are very strongly affected by what's happening in Olympia, and making sure that we are engaging with our representatives there so that even if we aren't getting what we want, we're still able to understand what their thinking is and essentially influence them down the road.
That's a great summary. Thanks, Tucker.
I've been involved in this type of work through my full-time paid job. And we go through this every year, and I'm the one that's communicating with the representatives or their assistants. And I was actually pretty surprised how available they are, how open they are to either come to campus, meeting up with the president for coffee. You know, everything that you went through was resonating with me. One of the neat things that we got to experience yesterday was last year following a bill by Brad Hawkins. And, you know, he presented, he shared with the board of trustees. He had a lot of one-on-ones with our team. And then it eventually passed, and the relationship that continued thereafter. President Harrison went and testified during the bill hearings and whatnot. So it was just a really neat process. And again, with all of our three representatives, including Congresswoman Schreier, we have really good relationships, and I was surprised at their availability and accessibility also.
Yeah, that's great. That's good feedback, and a good that you've had that experience. Yeah.
I want to add, I appreciate just kind of the normalizing, communicating with everyone, because it's we do have, I'd say we, the collective, we are board. I think our community has good relationships with our elected officials, and I like the reciprocity. I like being able to call upon them, but also at certain times them being able to call upon us as well if information is needed. So I'm just looking forward to maybe the piece that I haven't done is just the building of that relationship, just the call and let's have coffee, like congratulations, let's have coffee. Try to do that quickly, I guess, when we think of the election timeframe, and then realizing to maybe let things rest while they're in session and then come back a later time. So I just appreciate that timeline. That'll be something that I use as a tool quite a bit. Thank you.
I'll just add, I think it was a helpful reminder that just as we have constituents, coming to us individually as elected members of this board, that it doesn't just end here, that we need to reciprocate and push matters up, sort of up the chain. And, you know, sometimes it feels uncomfortable when you're getting singled out by someone from the community, but that's my job, is to hear from them, and just like it's their job to hear from us. So it's kind of a helpful reminder that yes, we're not in this vacuum, that we need to take it up on an individual relationship based level, because I do believe that's the key to everything, is building that relationship, because then they're going to help prioritize the things you need and really get more done together. So I think that was helpful.
Yeah, I think, you know, at least I've felt complimented when legislators have reached out and asked WASDA, me, or asked me to find a school director who will come to testify about a bill. When they're reaching out to you to say, do you like this? What needs to be changed? Is this reasonable? When you've gotten in their brain so that they're asking those questions, you know that that's success. And then to be complimented by being asked to testify on behalf of a bill because they want you to be there, their constituent, that's quite a compliment. And I've seen that happen a handful of times every legislative session. I have legislators who say, really want a school director there, really want a school district from this particular legislative district. So all of that is a demonstration of positive relationship building. You know, and a lot of times, I mean, in most cases, I will say, I don't have a stat for you right off, but just from personal experience, the bill that passes, if the bill passes at all, which is less likely to happen than not because most bills die, if the bill is to pass, it likely goes through a couple different versions before it lands on the final. So rarely is the bill passed as it's introduced unless it's really, really simple. And most bills aren't really simple, they're complex, which means there are opportunities for us to influence sort of the nuts and bolts of what's actually in the bill. And a lot of times amendments come from a phone call or a conversation because the legislator wants to pass the bill. There's an issue area that they're going to pass this bill, darn it, and they've got the support to do it. But where we can make it better for implementation is around some of the details that are laid out, as well as some of the dates. We also hope to influence the resources that accompany it. So there's lots of ways we can influence how a bill is passed once it's introduced. And again, so while the interim is really important, being available and interactive during the legislative session to help make it a better bill is also one of our collective roles. So it's good. Let's talk about students. Are you all thinking about bringing on some student board reps? Is this in your mindset, and what are the potential obstacles that you're grappling over?
Yeah, great. Great question. We have an advisory council. So we have a superintendent's advisory council with 14 members that meets once a month, and we discuss policy and all things that are happening in our district. And so we have that happening. And I think that came out of some of the conversations about having some student representatives. And so Kim and I were going through policies over the summer that we need to update and that haven't been addressed. And that one was one that, you know, we just don't have. And so we brought 1250 back to the policy committee, which Maria and Miranda are both on, and moved it forward. And the conversation at our last board meeting was, let's get some more information. Let's learn more about this. Let's talk as a board and grow together. And when when we were loosely preparing for this workshop, I saw your involvement with student reps. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like it was just set there. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're still in the learning and growing before we make a decision.
Great,
Yeah.
good. You're not alone. This is definitely a growing movement amongst school boards. When I first came to this role, we weren't taking data on it, but anecdotally, we anticipated or predicted that there were about 40 districts that we knew for sure had at least one student board rep on their board. And now we have over 130 school boards that have brought on at least one student board rep. And one thing to note, maybe what I'll do I need to bring my mic with me if I'm going over there? Can we bring a website up? The WASDA website? I just want to show you where there are, I would say of all the advocacy websites that we have, I'm just going to take this whole thing. Don't fight it, just go with it, you know? Our student rep website is very robust. Have you had a chance to take a look at it at all? You have, okay. So let me just show you just quickly some things that I think will be of help to you as you're going. Student representative advocacy here. You have got at your disposal, a list of all of the board policies that have already been adopted by all of those 130 school districts. This is all moved around and now I'm having a hard time finding it. There we go. So on this page, actually, we brought in these two former student board reps are now well on their way into college, but they recorded a series of videos that when you decide to bring on one or more student board reps can serve as sort of an onboarding tutorial for you. So you don't have to create this yourself. I would advise that you watch this first because the message is both for you and for student board reps from actual student board reps. Isn't that nice? We kind of have to put our money where our mouth is in honoring student voice if what we're trying to do is bring more student voice. So actually having students involved in the process is really important. You've got the model policy. I understand you've already brought that forward, but down here is a list of all the boards. There might be a few that are missing that have adopted a version of that model policy, but made it their own. The reason why I think it's important for you to take a peek at that is because school boards are doing it every different way possible, right? We know that some just have a senior who serves in the student board role, all the way to up in Port Angeles. We went to do a visit. I think it was at a regional meeting. They had a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior student board rep who stayed on through. So they brought the freshmen on with the anticipation that they would stay through their senior year and collectively serve as a mentor for the incoming student behind them. And another thing that was cool about that program was each of those students took on one of the school district's goals and made it one of their student projects to report out on the progress towards those goals by interviewing the student body about that particular issue. We heard one of the reports around student well-being and mental health in particular. So don't not do it just because that sounds like too much work. That was after years and years of implementing this and refining it from year to year, finding out what the students thought were interesting. So there's no wrong way to do it, except if you engage students and don't utilize their perspective once they get on here, right? I mean, that's what we hear from student board reps as the key for having a successful interaction with their board is that they're brought in to authentically engage with all of you. We had heard that there was a practice, and it probably is still going on, where the board rep had the opportunity to give an advisory vote, which doesn't count towards your final vote of anything, but that advisory vote was being offered after the vote of the board had already been taken. Kind of feels a little bit like a slap in the face. You may not choose to vote in line with what a student's perspective is, but certainly if you bring them on with the hope that you're going to hear their perspective, that you hear it before you take a final vote. It seems like common sense, but it's also scary, right? Because what if they do tell you something that you don't want to hear? Or isn't necessarily reflected in some of the public comments that you're hearing from some of the adults in your community. So you really do have to grapple with some of those things about what does student voice mean to you? What does it mean for this board? And how are you going to honor them and honor your elected role? And when there might not be alignment there, how are you going to grapple with that and make sure the student feels still part of and not pushed aside. This is one of the biggest things just to take under consideration as you move forward with this. This is one of our first documents that we created actually with the student rep network. So we host one time a month, just like we have a new director network, we've got a ledge rep network, we've got a student board rep network that meets virtually one time a month. And we invite any student board rep to join us for a webinar. We have a pretty standard agenda where we share some information about what's going on, how they can be involved, and then we hear from them what's working and what's not working in their own communities. So it's a best practices sort of group. It's a network, if you will. And every year they develop a resource guide or take on a project, and that project, all of those projects are posted on our website. They're right there, 2024, 23, 22, you'll see. So these are actual guidance documents that our student rep network have created to help you better engage with the student board reps you choose to bring on. Here's the one on the advisory voting that I was just talking about. What's nice about this document, it's a little more comprehensive than those, is you could basically turn this a bit into an onboarding document because the message is really to the students, but you can use it as a message to you about how to support them in their role. It gives guidance on how they can represent their student body, how to communicate with all of you. I mean, thinking all the way to, what does the school board do? How is a student representative's role established, and how are they, don't surprise them when the board takes a first vote and they didn't realize they don't get to be a part of that, right? So make sure that you're really communicating roles and responsibilities to them before they come on board. Who is their point of contact? So are one of you going to serve as a mentor? Is there something really big that's going to happen at this board meeting tomorrow night? You're going to have a group of community members who are really upset about a particular issue. Your student board reps haven't had the benefit of being in work sessions or maybe even know where to find the agenda. So there should be a person, one of you on the board, who's giving them a heads up about what they're walking into at every board meeting as well. So again, it all comes down to relationships and communication, as everything does. It takes so much time, but in order to honor them and make sure they're not blindsided, making sure you've got someone who's communicating with them. How are you going to engage them with email? Are they going to use their own personal email address, or do you have a school board website? Or web address, and are you going to give them one as well? What are you going to give them access to? What shouldn't they have access to? Et cetera, et cetera. So things to consider. We always have a couple sessions for student reps at annual conference. So are you thinking that you might even have a student rep by that time? No, not by then. So if you all are curious about that, there will be students there, and you can actually ask them questions about what's worked on your own board and what hasn't worked. That will serve as informative to you all. So what else might be helpful to know about student reps that I could provide to you, because you wanted to be sure there was some time carved out. So what would be good? Okay.
Thing, just time and then working together. Thanks, Liz. There I am again. Talking without my mic on. But yeah, I know. Just the Zoomers didn't. Yeah.
So the question I have, I think, is just in the work you've helped facilitate, how do most of the boards go about doing these just initial discussions? I mean, we've kind of brought it up a couple of times. We've looked at a 2-paragraph policy, but this is a much broader conversation that I don't feel appropriate to just delegate to 2 people and say, bring us back a policy. This is, there's quite a wide variety of ways to do even the work to find out what do we want, how many members, how are we getting our representative samples? Do you see boards workshopping this over years, over weeks? I mean, to me, it feels like this is kind of a workshop, and then how do we structure those workshops, bring these boards in that have had, because I think we all want to make sure that it's a meaningful experience,
Sure.
both to the student and to us,
Yeah.
because it's, we don't just want an honor student that's not maybe representative
Right.
of student voice.
Yes.
That wants this on their college application. And we want to be feeling like we're hearing from students, and we want to feel that they're comfortable with the commitment, the participation level, the things that would be expected to be a valuable part of the board. So to me,
It's
it
a
just
great question.
feels like a really long process that I think we all want to do the work, but it's kind of like, how do we structure that work?
Yeah, how do you even get started, right? There's no right or wrong way. Kind of just gotta roll up your sleeves and dig in. If you would like, if you as board president, or if there's a champion for this effort within the board, I'm happy to do an email connection to some other school boards, maybe even in your director area, who have some experience with this already, and even just a few of you having some informal conversations about how did you do it? What worked? What would you tell us not to do? Sometimes what not to do is even more informative than what to do, from other people's experience. So I think you could start out pretty informally, just having some conversations with some of your neighbors or some of the other school boards who have just done this of a similar size. And I'm happy to make those connections for you. I would recommend pulling some of those policies that other boards have already adopted and taking a look at some of the different models of what they've done and what feels like a good starting point, recognizing that you can start somewhere and evolve the program over time. I would recommend, were you to ask me, that you start with 2 student board reps, be thinking about it as a program of having 2, one junior and one senior. That way they have one another. And you're building in sort of a mentorship model where, at least in the second year, that former junior will be a senior and can take the junior under their wing and say, here's how some of these things work. In terms of a timeline, I see many school boards do the application process in the spring. So you use all the systems of communication that are used for other methods or other purposes to reach students, whether that's, you got a social media account, you've got morning announcements, you've got a family or student newsletter of some kind, you're communicating the opportunity to them there. I've heard of some school boards hosting like a what is the school board night, like inviting them if they're interested to come to a school board meeting. They can sit in the audience and ask questions. And then ensuring, again, one of the things I've heard not to do is just going, you've already mentioned this, don't go just to the ASB, right? That you are making an intentional effort to reach students from a variety of different backgrounds that aren't just already student leaders. So you're getting some different perspectives than you would normally get. That's part of the benefit of it. So maybe even working with student advisors or teacher advisors who are working with groups of students who may not already be in athletics or ASB or other leadership opportunities, making sure your reach is going out that way. So I think just a starting point is figuring out what you as a group want to do to start. Do you want two student board reps? What are some ways that roles have been defined? Where will they sit? How will you onboard them? Who is a 1 or 2 mentors on the board who will be available if they've got questions about what did it mean when you did this? Or how do your agendas get set? Or where can I find more information about what's going to happen next? Just someone to give sort of a tutorial. It's dawning on me as I spew out this information that a step-by-step guide probably would be helpful for us to develop. So thanks for that reflection. Yeah, I think 1 or 2 of you starting with learning from some other school boards about where to start might be your best starting point. And if you're thinking maybe even that your first round might happen in the spring, you've got between now and April to collect some data, to attend annual conference. Since I understand quite a few of you will be there, there's a lot of opportunity to learn there. And you won't have to create it on your own because 130 districts have already gone through this already. So hopefully you can take a policy that's already been adopted, and learn from some of their practices and replicate that on your own as a starting point. Start small and then grow it.
I was gonna say, Martin and I both did like a lot of the, at the WASA conference last year, a lot of the breakout sessions that
Okay.
had the student advisors, and everyone had a different thing with a different group with it. So it's like, I appreciate you're like, no, there's 140 people and they're all doing it a different way.
Yeah,
But it was interesting to be like, oh, we're gonna go there and they're gonna tell us how to do it. And then, oh, that works. And the next person is like entirely different.
yeah. I know, sorry. Sometimes it's nice when someone tells you what to do. Let us remember this. Yes.
I think it would be helpful to know which ones maybe are doing it well. Not
Yeah,
even the
of
ones that have been
course,
doing
yeah.
it the longest, but the ones that are doing, because I don't have time to read 130 different
course.
policies.
Yeah.
And I know some schools just feel the pressure to do this, and that's not a good
No.
model to follow either. So
No.
it's who's doing this, doing it well, based primarily on the student perspective, honestly.
Totally, yes.
And then how did they get there?
Yeah.
Would be, I think, most helpful.
Great.
To kind of help us, because I think we want it to be as valuable as possible and not just do it because everybody's doing it.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes good sense. That's good thinking. If I were to do a couple email introductions with some of the boards who I understand are doing it well.
I've been holding back, but I think it's time for me to step in. They've heard what I have to say about this. I think there's a lot more happening than you realize in this school district. And I introduced this by saying there are weak ways to do it and there are strong ways to do it. And frankly, I circled two words here: authentic and mentoring. Another word I would throw out is gestation, process, structure. Students have a unique dimension. So at the Student Advisory Council on Wednesday, right? Corey put up to them the policy and asked them how they felt about it. And we learned a lot from that.
Nice.
But my comment, and I think you saw the badly written cryptic thing, is the students' questions showed their maturity, but it also showed that they didn't know where to find the tools, how to do the job. They didn't know how to be representative of a whole student body. All of the things that say, I wrote here, it's not about what it looks like. It's not about having two people sitting there on a board, and I use the word unkindly sound bites. It's about being deeply interacting, and it's happening actually below the surface of the board if you want it to work.
Yeah.
And I was kind of holding back because, I wanted to listen to what you said and the others, and I'm kind of the, I don't know what you call it, the nasty voice in the room, because I've been listening to students for 4 years since we started it. And I do feel you're right. You should do it slowly, do it carefully, do it intentionally. And you can, on that weak to strong structure, if we get a chance to see other students, you can form different opinions of what impresses you and what doesn't impress you. But, there's a genuine choice, because if they know this, I think Yakima is the gold standard.
Yeah, they got a
But
national
you look
award
at
for
what
it,
they
actually.
had. I think they had more or less a full-time, half-time advisor doing it. They had a school, one or two, and I talked to the school board directors last year at WASDA, who were very friendly and knew the students because they'd worked in the mill with them.
Yeah,
And that's totally different from lifting somebody up and sticking them on the thing and being a mentor. I didn't mean to say this because you already heard this already,
yeah, no,
but
it's all well noted.
but
Absolutely.
your points touched on many of the obstacles of how you get there. But I think most school districts are making a big mistake and going for a token presence when they could be going for a real way of getting a wide and deep student voice coming into another thing, co-create policies. You talked about finding out what the students thought was important. Let them choose what they want to work on as a recommendation. And I guess I wave my hands, I'm going to quit, because I think it's really, really important. And I didn't know you had those resources, so that's great. And Corey sent us some information. So, I think from your point of view, to know that this district is serious about it and back off what I've said, let's just throw it out the room. Yes, that whole playing field is there, but it's a little more developed than us just starting to think about it.
It's critical to go slow first, right? Like, because it's not just like we're making a mistake with an adult who can, I mean, the students are resilient and they can recover, but you don't want to harm them in the process. And we've seen that happen. So well noted. It's good for you to be cautious and do it right. And if it takes you a couple years to get there, but when you launch it, it's really well done and students feel that they're authentically engaged, then it was worth the time that you invested. So yeah, don't disagree with you at all, Martin. So my call to action, I think, is to maybe do a few introductions with a couple school boards who have done this well. From my perspective, I'll just offer that. And there are lots of ways to do it well, but my litmus test is that students feel good about being a part of it, would be one of the ways that I would consider whether or not they're doing it well. And I'll have a better sense for that when we have our first student rep network meeting on Monday, September 30th. It's our kickoff to the school year. And we'll get a sense from that group of students who's cheering the praises of their district and the other ones who might have concerns. So we get a sense for how things are going from them as well.
You know, there's some technical hard structure that you could be very, very helpful with.
Okay.
Because we hadn't even thought about public records, public meetings and stuff like that till it was brought up by the principal of the high school on Wednesday. And you talked about, you know, what kind of email do they use? How are they coached to take care of themselves? But along with that, how can you have interaction with board members and other leaders in the community and the school district that are only part of the people, because you don't want to have more than two board members.
Right.
But to create, if you have any insights on how to build the multiple platforms, so there's lots of different ways that people interact and how you manage being in the public sector and I'm not sure how formal a student advisory position on a board is as compared to the electoral obligations, that legal aspect of it as well.
Right.
That would be an area that we hadn't thought about at all here.
Yep. Definitely something to talk with your legal counsel about
Oh,
before it happens. But yeah, I'll look into it too. Yep. Nice. I'm way over time. Yeah, sorry. No, my fault. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Doesn't have to be the last time I share information with you though. So I'm available if you need anything else and for follow-up and yeah, just appreciate you carving out some time to learn about this work. It's important amongst all the other important stuff you do. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. For
Yeah,
being
we'll
here.
see you at annual conference, if not before. I'll see you
Wonderful.
in a couple days. Wonderful.
thank you very much for coming and
Ah.
your time and the effort.
It was my pleasure, really. Thank you.
Right. We are adjourned.